The mechanic's hands were shaking as he approached Princess Diana. "Ma'am, I can't stay silent anymore. Someone wants you dead in a car crash. I've fixed your brakes 6 times in 8 months. Each time, they've been deliberately cut. This isn't mechanical failure. This is murder preparation." July 18th, 1997. Terry Brennan had worked as Diana's primary automotive technician for 12 years. He'd serviced every vehicle she'd owned since 1985, maintained the Royal Garage at Kensington Palace, and earned complete trust through competence and discretion. He was the kind of professional who never gossiped, never overstepped, never caused problems, until today. Today, his conscience had finally overwhelmed his fear. Diana had just returned from a morning charity event, parking her dark blue BMW in the palace garage. Terry had been waiting, pacing nervously for over an hour. When she stepped out of the vehicle, he approached quickly before her protection officer could intervene. "Ma'am, I need to speak with you. Privately. It's urgent." Diana recognized the panic in his voice immediately. "Terry? What's wrong?" "Not here. Please. Somewhere we can't be overheard." Inspector Graham Walsh stepped forward protectively. "Ma'am, if there's a security concern—" "It's all right, Graham. Terry's been with me for years. If he says it's urgent, I believe him." Diana gestured toward a small office adjacent to the garage. "In here." The office was cramped, smelling of motor oil and metal. Diana closed the door while Terry stood by the workbench, his weathered hands gripping the edge so tightly his knuckles were white. "Tell me what's happening," Diana said gently. Terry took a shaky breath. "Ma'am, I don't know how to say this, so I'm just going to say it directly. Someone has been sabotaging your car, repeatedly, systematically, for months." Diana felt ice spreading through her chest. "Sabotaging how?" "Your brakes, specifically the brake lines and hydraulic fluid system." Terry pulled out a folder filled with photographs and technical notes. "I started noticing problems in January. You brought the BMW in for routine service, and when I checked the brake system, I found the fluid level was critically low. Not unusual by itself. Systems can develop slow leaks. But when I investigated further, I found something odd." He showed Diana a close-up photograph of a brake line. "See this? This isn't normal wear and tear. This is a precision cut. Someone used a sharp tool to create a tiny incision in the line. Small enough that it wouldn't cause immediate failure, but large enough that fluid would leak out gradually. Over a few days or weeks of driving, your brake pressure would drop to dangerous levels." Diana stared at the photograph. "You're saying someone deliberately damaged my brakes?" "Yes. And that was just January. I replaced the line, filled the system, tested it thoroughly. I assumed it was a one-time thing. Maybe vandalism, maybe a disgruntled former employee." Terry flipped to another set of photos. "Then, in February, you came in for another service. Same problem. Brake fluid critically low. Different line, same type of precision cut." "You're certain it was deliberate?" "Ma'am, I've been a mechanic for 30 years. I know the difference between mechanical failure and sabotage. These cuts were made by someone who knows exactly how brake systems work. Someone who understands how to create a failure that looks like natural degradation." Diana sat down heavily on a workbench stool. "How many times has this happened?" Terry's voice was barely a whisper. 6 times. January, February, March, April, June, and last week. 6 times in 8 months, someone has accessed your vehicle and compromised the brake system. "Why didn't you tell me before?" Terry's face showed genuine anguish. "Because I was terrified, ma'am. The first time, I thought I was being paranoid. The second time, I started documenting everything but convinced myself it might be coincidence. By the third time, I knew something sinister was happening, but I didn't know who to trust. If someone had access to sabotage your car inside the Royal Garage, they had to have authorization. They had to be someone with security clearance." "You think it's someone from inside the palace?" "I know it is." Terry pulled out another document. "After the 4th incident, I started staying late watching the garage. In May, I saw something that confirmed my suspicions." Diana leaned forward. "What did you see?" "A man in a palace maintenance uniform accessing your BMW at 11 p.m. I recognized him, Martin Crawford. He's listed as an authorized palace technician approved for vehicle maintenance. I watched him open your hood, work on something for about 20 minutes, then leave." "Did you confront him?" "I was going to. But the next morning, I received a visit from 2 men who identified themselves as palace security. They told me there had been concerns about my work quality. They said if I wanted to keep my contract, I needed to stop asking questions and focus on doing my job properly. The message was clear: stay quiet or lose everything. Diana felt fury rising. They threatened you? They didn't have to be explicit. I have a wife, 2 kids, a mortgage. I need this job. So I stayed quiet. I kept fixing the sabotage, documenting everything, but telling no one. Terry's voice cracked. But after last week, I can't do this anymore. My conscience won't let me. What happened last week? Terry showed her his most recent photographs. The sabotage got more sophisticated. This time, they didn't just cut the brake line. They also compromised the brake fluid reservoir cap, creating a seal that looks normal but allows gradual fluid loss. And they damaged the brake warning sensor so the dashboard light wouldn't alert you to low pressure until it was critically dangerous. Diana stared at the technical diagrams, understanding the horrifying implication. This would cause complete brake failure while driving. At high speed, yes. The brakes would feel normal at first. You'd have some stopping power at low speeds. But if you needed to brake hard, say, in an emergency or at high speed on a motorway, the system would fail catastrophically. You'd press the pedal and nothing would happen. This could kill me. That's exactly what it's designed to do, and make it look like mechanical failure or driver error. Terry's hands were shaking again. Ma'am, I've been losing sleep for months over this. Every time you drive away, I wonder if today's the day they succeed. If today's the day I read about Princess Diana dying in a tragic car accident, knowing I could have prevented it. Diana stood and placed her hand on Terry's shoulder. You're telling me now. That took tremendous courage. It took too long. I should have spoken up after the second time. Tears welled in Terry's eyes. I was selfish. I was scared for my job, my family. But if something happened to you because I stayed silent, I'd never forgive myself. Diana made a decision. Show me everything. Every photograph, every note, every detail. For the next hour, Terry walked Diana through his documentation. 8 months of careful records showing a pattern of systematic sabotage. They're patient, Terry explained, spreading photographs across the workbench. Look at this from January. They cut the brake line so it would take 2 to 3 weeks for enough fluid to leak. February was more sophisticated. They abraded the line to make it look like natural wear. Diana studied the timeline. 6 times in 8 months, but 3 in the last 10 weeks. They're escalating. And the methods are evolving. Last week included 3 separate vulnerabilities. Cut line, compromised reservoir cap, disabled warning sensor. They're ensuring you have no warning before failure. They want me silenced, Diana said. The royal family. Or people acting on their behalf. This is institutional. Terry nodded. I've thought the same thing. The access patterns, the timing, it all points to someone with palace authorization. Diana pulled out her mobile phone. I'm calling my solicitor. This documentation needs securing immediately. Ma'am, if you go public, they'll know I came forward. My family could be in danger. Diana paused. We'll be strategic. Multiple copies distributed to trusted parties. You continue servicing cars normally. Don't let them know you've told me. Terry nodded. But you need to be extremely careful about which vehicles you drive. What about your safety? I have a wife and 2 daughters, but staying silent doesn't protect them either. If you die because I said nothing, that guilt would destroy me. At least this way, I've done the right thing. Diana felt respect for this man. We'll protect you, and if anything happens to you, the documentation goes public immediately. Diana worked with solicitor Anthony Matthews and security, consultant James Morrison, a former MI5 agent, to analyze Terry's evidence. Morrison examined the documentation for 3 days. This is sophisticated work, Morrison concluded. Mechanical knowledge plus security access. But look at the timing. Each sabotage corresponds to something you did that challenged the establishment. January 15th, 3 days after the landmine campaign. February 22nd, after divorce solicitors. They're preparing contingencies. Can we identify who's responsible? Matthews asked. Morrison pulled out surveillance photos. Martin Crawford is the operator, but night access to royal vehicles requires high-level approval. Crawford's admission was signed off by Richard Henshaw, assistant to Prince Philip's private secretary. Diana absorbed this. My father-in-law is authorizing attempts on my life. Whether direct orders or plausible deniability, the result is the same. You're in danger from institutional power, Morrison said. We should go to police. The police serve the crown, Diana said bitterly. Traditional law enforcement might just alert them that I know. Morrison nodded. Protection first, exposure second. Vary your vehicles. Multiple independent mechanics. Install hidden cameras. Create a dead man's switch. Documentation released automatically if anything happens. I'm living as if I'm marked for assassination. Because you are, Morrison said bluntly. These aren't pranks. They're pre-operational preparations. Someone is creating circumstances where your death looks accidental. Over the following days, Diana worked with her solicitor Anthony Matthews and a private security consultant named James Morrison to analyze Terry's evidence. Morrison was a former MI5 agent who'd left the service over ethical concerns about domestic surveillance operations. His expertise in both security protocols and covert operations made him uniquely qualified to understand what Diana was facing. Morrison spent 3 days examining Terry's documentation, cross-referencing the sabotage timeline with Diana's public schedule and palace security logs. When he finally presented his findings, his expression was grave. This is sophisticated work, Morrison concluded, spreading the evidence across Diana's private office desk. Whoever's doing this has both mechanical knowledge and security access. But more than that, they have operational intelligence. Look at the timing of each sabotage incident. He pointed to his analysis. January 15th, 3 days after you announced the landmine campaign. February 22nd, 1 day after your meeting with divorce solicitors became public. March 30th, the week after you visited Pakistan despite Foreign Office objections. The pattern continues. Each act of sabotage corresponds to something you did that challenged or embarrassed the establishment. Diana felt cold. They're not just trying to kill me. They're punishing me. More than that, they're preparing contingencies, creating the capability to eliminate you if you cross certain lines. The fact that they've done it 6 times without triggering the failure suggests they're maintaining the option, not yet activating it. Anthony Matthews was taking detailed notes. Can we identify who's responsible with more specificity than just palace authorities? Morrison pulled out surveillance photographs Terry had provided. Terry identified Martin Crawford as the primary operator, but Crawford is essentially hired help. The fact that he has access during night shifts, that security admits him without question, that no alarms are raised when he spends 20 minutes working on the princess's vehicle at midnight, all of this requires high-level authorization. How high? I cross-referenced palace security protocols. Night access to royal vehicles requires approval from the master of the household's office or higher. Crawford's admission was signed off by Richard Henshaw, assistant to Prince Philip's private secretary. That creates a direct chain from the sabotage to the highest levels of palace administration. Diana absorbed this information. My father-in-law is authorizing attempts on my life. Or at minimum, someone very close to him is, using his authority. Morrison continued. The question is whether Philip himself knows, or whether subordinates are acting on what they believe to be his wishes. Does it matter? Either way, I'm the target. For legal purposes, yes. For your protection, not really. Whether it's direct orders or plausible deniability, the result is the same. You're in danger from people with institutional power. Terry Brennan continued his work, now acting as Diana's eyes. He installed tiny cameras documenting everyone who accessed her vehicles. Within 2 weeks, surveillance revealed a pattern. Martin Crawford appeared regularly during night shifts. Security logs showed he was admitted by Richard Henshaw, who worked under Prince Philip's private secretary. It goes high, Morrison told Diana. This isn't some rogue mechanic. This is coordinated through palace channels. Diana distributed copies of all evidence to multiple trusted individuals. Her solicitor, Rosa Monckton, Paul Burrell. She wrote a detailed letter. If you are reading this, it means they finally succeeded. The car crash was not an accident. I was murdered, and this evidence proves it. 6 weeks after Terry's warning, Diana traveled to Paris. Before leaving, she met with Terry one final time. The Mercedes in Paris, is it safe? Terry looked uncomfortable. It's not one of your regular vehicles. I haven't inspected it personally. Should I be worried? I'd be worried about any vehicle I haven't verified. Just please be careful. Don't let anyone pressure you into high-speed travel. Diana hugged him. Thank you, Terry, for your courage. You may have saved my life. 3 weeks later, Terry was watching television when the news broke. Princess Diana, killed in car crash in Paris. Initial reports mentioned brake failure as possible contributing factor. He immediately called Morrison. They did it. They finally did it. With brake problems? After 8 months of systematic sabotage, this is exactly what they were preparing for. The documentation Diana and Terry prepared was reviewed by authorities, but dismissed as irrelevant to the Paris crash investigation. Terry carried that knowledge for the rest of his life. He knew what he discovered, what he documented. Diana had been targeted for 8 months before her death. The official explanation matched exactly the type of accidental brake failure rehearsed repeatedly on her vehicles. Years later, independent investigators discovered Terry's documentation. They saw the photographs, read about 8 months of sabotage. They understood Diana hadn't been paranoid, she'd been targeted. But by then, the people responsible had covered tracks. Crawford quietly resigned. Henshaw transferred to diplomatic posting. Paper trail sanitized. The terrifying truth? Diana had been warned. She documented it, prepared for it, tried to protect herself. And then it happened anyway, exactly as predicted, in a foreign country where British security didn't apply. Terry Brennan's warning had been accurate. Someone wanted Diana dead in a car crash. They'd prepared methodically, testing methods, creating vulnerabilities, waiting for the right opportunity. When Diana left her verified vehicles and trusted mechanics, they got their chance. The mechanics' hands had been shaking. This isn't mechanical failure, this is murder preparation. He'd been right. The preparation was real, the intent genuine, and the outcome, 3 weeks later in Paris Tunnel, exactly what he'd feared.